Ехо, здравейте олимпийци! Аз съм Рони, 18 часа и е време за нашата рубрика Книжна неделя. Както знаете, всяка неделя четем за вас на различни езици и излъчваме премиерно видеята си. Така че днес ще чета за вас на английски. Настанете се удобно, олимпийци! Let's go! Историята, която избрах да чета за вас днес, е на О'Хенри и една от неговите кратки истории. Както знаете, те завършват винаги с неочакван край. И коя е историята ни? $1000. $1000, said lawyer Tolman for the second time, and here is the money. Young Gillian gave a short laugh as he counted out the thin $50 notes. It's such a difficult amount to receive, he explained to the lawyer. If it had been 10,000, then I might really be able to do something with it. Even $50 would have been less trouble. You heard the reading of your uncle's will, continued lawyer Tolman. He had a dry, businesslike voice. I do not know if you listened to the several conditions. I must remind you of one. According to the will, you must tell us in writing just how you spent this $1,000. You must do this as soon as you spend the money. I trust that you will go along with the late Mr. Gillian's wishes. You may count on it, said the young man in a friendly manner, even though I was never very good with figures. Gillian went to his club. It was a club whose members included some of the city's rich and famous men. There he looked for a man he called Old Bryson. Old Bryson was about 40. He was sitting quietly in a corner reading a book. When he saw Gillian coming, he laid down his book and took off his glasses. Hey, Old Bryson, said Gillian, I have a funny story to tell you. I wish you would tell it to someone else, said Old Bryson. You know how I dislike your stories. This is a better one than usual, said Gillian, rolling a cigarette. It's both sad and funny. I've just come from the office of my late uncle's lawyers. He left me an even $1,000. Now, what can a man possibly do with $1,000? I thought, said Old Bryson, showing little interest, that the late Spetimus Gillian was worth about $500,000. He was, agreed Gillian joyously, and that's why it's so funny. He has left the whole bag of money to help sick people, with one or two exceptions. The housekeepers each receive $10 and a ring. His nephew gets $1,000. You've always had enough money to spend, noted Old Bryson. Lots, said Gillian. Uncle always gave me more than enough. Any other family members? Asked Old Bryson. None. Gillian looked at his cigarette and played with it nervously for a moment. Well, there is a Miss Hayden who lived in my uncle's house. She's a quiet thing, musical, the daughter of somebody who was unlucky enough to be his friend. I forgot to say that she too got the ring and $10. I wish that was me. Then I could order 2 bottles of wine, give the ring to the waiter, and forget about the whole business. Once again, Old Bryson, tell me what a fellow can do with $1,000. Old Bryson cleaned his glasses and smiled. And when Old Bryson smiled, that usually meant trouble for Gillian. $1,000, he began, means much or little. One man may buy a happy home with it and laugh at Rockefeller. Another could send his wife south with it and save her life. $1,000 would buy milk for 100 babies during June, July, and August, and save 50 of their lives. You could spend it in less than half an hour in one of the city's art shops. It could put a young man through university. You could move to a New Hampshire town and live very well for 2 years on it. Or you could pay to use a famous theater for one night. Then people would come and listen to you tell them how difficult it is to receive money from a rich uncle. "That's not very funny, old Bryson," said Gillian. "I asked you to tell me what I could do with $1,000. "You," said Bryson with a gentle laugh. "Why, Bobby Gillian, there's only one thing you can do. You can go buy Miss Lotta Lorry a diamond necklace with the money. Then take yourself off to a farm in Idaho, one with animals that I especially dislike." "Thanks," said Gillian, getting up. "I thought I could count on you, old Bryson. I think you're perfectly right." "I did want to spend it all at one time." Gillian telephoned for a taxi and said to the driver, "Take me to the Columbian Theater, please." Miss Lotta Lorry was an actress. She was preparing the makeup on her face before the play began. Her helper told her that Mr. Gillian wanted to see her. "Let him in," said Miss Lorry. "Now, what is it, Bobby? I'm going on in 2 minutes." "You need a little more makeup behind your right ear," Gillian told her. "That's better. It won't take you 2 minutes for me. How would you like something in the way of a necklace?" "I can buy you one for an even 1,000. "Oh, whatever you say," replied Miss Lorry. "Fix my hair, Adams. Say, Bobby, did you see that necklace Dale Stacy had on the other night? $2,200 it cost at Tiffany's. But of course, pull my hat a little to the left, Adams." "Miss Lorry, for the opening scene," cried the cowboy outside. Gillian returned to where his taxi was waiting. "What would you do with $1,000 if you had it?" he asked the driver. "Open a bar," said the taxi driver quickly. "I know a place where I could make lots of money. It's a 4-story building on a corner. I've got it all figured out. On the 2nd story, a Chinese restaurant. 3rd floor, haircuts and beauty salons. 4th floor, card games and pool room. If you were thinking of giving the money—" "Oh no," said Gillian. "I just wanted to know, that's all. I pay you by the hour. Drive until I tell you to stop." 8 streets down Broadway, Gillian opened the door and got out. A blind man sat upon a seat on the sidewalk, selling pens and pencils. Gillian went out and stood before him. "Excuse me," he said, "but would you mind telling me what would you do if you had $1,000? "You got out of that taxi that just drove up, didn't you?" asked the blind man. "I did," said Gillian. "I guess you're all right," said the blind pencil dealer, "to ride in a taxi by daylight. Take a look at this, if you like." He took a small book from his coat and held it out. Gillian opened it and saw that it was a bank book. It showed that the blind man had savings of $1,785. Gillian returned to the book and got into the taxi. "I forgot something," he told the driver. "You may drive to the law offices of Tolman and Sharp on Broadway." Lawyer Tolman looked at him through his gold glasses. "I beg your pardon," said Gillian nicely, "but may I ask you a question? Was Miss Hayden left anything by my uncle's will beside the ring and the $10? "Nothing," said Mr. Tolman. "I thank you very much, sir," said Gillian, and out he went to his taxi. He gave the driver the address of his late uncle's home. Miss Hayden was writing letters in the study. She was small and thin and clothed in black, but you wouldn't have noticed her eyes. Gillian walked in with his usual manner of looking at the world as unimportant. "I've just come from old Thomas," he explained. "They've been going over the papers down there. They found," Gillian tried to use just the right lawyer-like word, "they found a new part added to the will. It seemed that the old man had some second thoughts on that matter. He willed you $1,000. I was driving up this way and Tolman asked me to bring you the money. Here it is. You'd better count it to see if it's right. Gillian laid the money beside her hand on the table. Miss Hayden turned white. Oh, she said, and again, oh. Gillian half turned and looked out of the window. I suppose, of course, he said in a low voice, that you know I love you. I'm sorry, said Miss Hayden, taking up her money. There is no use, asked Gillian almost light-heartedly. I'm sorry, she said. May I write a note? Asked Gillian, with a smile. He seated himself at the big study table. She supplied him with a paper and pen and then went back to her chair. Gillian wrote down just how he spent his $1,000 in the words. Paid by the family bad boy, Robert Gillian, $1,000 because of the happiness owed by heaven to the best and dearest woman on earth. Gillian picked up his letter, said good day to Miss Hayden and went on his way. His taxi stopped again at the offices of Tolman and Sharp. I have spent $1,000, he said happily to Tolman, and I have come to report just how it was spent, as agreed. There is quite a feeling of summer in the air, don't you think so, Mr. Tolman? He placed the letter on the lawyer's table. You will find there, sir, how and why the money was spent. Without touching the letter, Mr. Tolman went to a door and called the other lawyer Sharp. Together they walked back to a small room where they kept their most important papers. Shortly they returned, holding what looked to be such a set of papers. They talked quietly for some time together. Then Tolman began to speak. Mr. Gillian, he said, very businesslike. There was a special part to your uncle's will. He asked us not to open it until he had let us know how you spent $1,000. Since you have done as he asked, Mr. Sharp and I have read the special part of his will. There are many words of law that are difficult to understand, but I will tell you in simple language what it says. If you show a sense of goodness in your heart while using the money, then the value of your share of the will shall increase. Mr. Sharp and I have been named as the judges on this matter. We shall do just as your uncle wished. Now, the special part states that if your spending of the money is done in a wise, kind, or unselfish manner, then it is in our power to hand you another $50,000. But if, as the late Mr. Gillian willed, you have used this money as you have used money in the past, that is, with poor judgment, then the $50,000 is to be paid to Miriam Hayden instead. Now, Mr. Gillian, Mr. Sharp, and I will look closely at your letter, which explains how you spent the $1,000. I do hope that you trust our judgment with this decision. Mr. Tolman reached for the letter, but Gillian was a little faster in reaching for it. He quickly tore up the letter into small pieces and put them in his pocket. It's all right, he said smilingly. There is no need for you to bother with this. I don't suppose you understand horse racing anyway. I lost the $1,000 on the races. Good day to you, gentlemen. Tolman and Sharp shook their hands sadly at each other when Gillian left, for they heard him singing happily in the hallway as he was leaving. Олимпийци, много интересна история отново от О'Хенри и неочакван край, както винаги. Надявам се да ви е било интересно и ще се видим отново скоро. Чао, чао!
Скъпи олимпийци, не забравяйте да се абонирате за нашия YouTube канал. Натиснете абониране, след това камбанката, за да получавате известие за всички нови видеа, които качваме. Благодарим ви, че бяхме заедно.